All right, we got a twist for you guys now in the conversation. We're going to talk to one of the writers of the Batman series about a potentially nefarious family that's secretly ruling a lot of this country. All that is true, but there are a lot of twists and turns. Jonathan Larson also happens to be the managing editor of TYT and has written about the family, which is, well, I guess I don't know that, Jonathan, that they would describe themselves as a political organization, but they certainly are, especially based on your reporting. So before we do anything else, and we'll get back to Batman in a minute, for the folks who don't know, what is the family?
So the family is AKA the Fellowship Foundation. It's known popularly as the family because a book about them by that name, and which was made into a Netflix documentary series a few years ago. So that's what they're popularly known as. What they are is a Christian, although they would dispute that, organization. They say they are followers of Jesus. They don't lay claim to any specific denomination. And to your point earlier, they do say that they're not political. That has been their claim, but they also like to not have their political activities exposed or made public. So the National Prayer Breakfast is run by them, but if you didn't know better, you would think from the letters that get sent out every year that it's actually hosted by members of Congress who happen to be part of the weekly prayer breakfast, prayer meetings, in both the House and the Senate, which, by the way, are also tied to the Fellowship Foundation. And it's, of course, it's been scandalous over the years. I shouldn't say of course, but it has been scandalous over the years because some of their theological leanings of some of the people in charge and some of the people in positions of influence have affected events on the world stage, let's say.
Yeah, so and through this series, we had Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, yell at you. That was fun. I hope he didn't start a pillow fight with you. Okay, we'll get back to that. But and I'm amused by the idea of like, no, this is not strictly a Christian organization. No, we're just about Jesus. Well, okay, that gives you some indication. Now, mind you, Muslims also believe in Jesus as a prophet, but probably not going overly Muslim direction with these meetings. But speaking of which brings us to the most prominent pastor probably in the country, Franklin Graham. And he is certainly right-wing, very big-time Trump supporter. Now, a partisan like him wouldn't be involved with the family, would he, Jonathan?
I like how you act as though you haven't read the story and don't know it very well. That's good, that's good. But yes, of course, to your point, his dad, Billy Graham, was an even more well-known, more influential evangelical preacher in this country and was the co-founder, possibly the most important co-founder of the National Prayer Breakfast in its first iteration, 3. And so it turns out that the prayer breakfast is still to this day being funded, albeit overtly, by Franklin Graham, specifically through the massive nonprofit charitable organization he runs.
John, did you find out all the other progressive organizations that Franklin Graham is funding?
Well, right, he does not. And the two organizations, Samaritan's Purse, which does relief, and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, which does evangelism, literally crusades, they are quite open about their politics when it comes to political matters that they believe are addressed in the Bible. So they are very openly anti-reproductive rights, against abortion, very openly anti-LGBTQ, and they're also both at the forefront of this global movement that you have now for religious freedom, which sounds fantastic, and lots of people on the left would have no qualms about signing up with that cause. But it's being used as sort of a wedge to ensure the freedom of people to discriminate against others because that's the exercise of their religion. So Franklin Graham is not funding left-wing groups, and also more to the point, left-wing groups are not funding the National Prayer Breakfast or the Fellowship Foundation, which runs it. Franklin Graham, as we reported, is literally the only donor to the breakfast. Their only source of breakfast revenue, aside from the ticket fees, the registration fees that attendees and guests have to pay.
Right. So Jonathan mentioned crusades there. Of course, in this case, they're rhetorical, moral, and the problem is political crusades. And they don't divide evenly between left and right, as the reporting indicates. And you can go to tyt.com/investigations, and we'll put a link in the description box that you can check out. They're not nonpartisan. All of their political leanings are anti-choice, unsurprisingly, and certainly very anti-LGBT, especially abroad. Those stories are amazing. Unsurprising that Mike Lindell got roped into this, and that's where the conflict with Jonathan came into effect here. But you might be wondering, if you're in the audience, wait, okay, so it's a right-wing organization. Why are we having this conversation? Congratulations, guys. You uncovered that the right wing is right wing. But Jonathan, that's not how they present, and a lot of Democrats participate in this, don't they?
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, doing this series on any of evangelical organizations that are out there pursuing the same causes, because this one is uniquely at the nexus of religion and politics. And the reason they can keep feet in both worlds is because Democratic allies of the organization consistently every year step up with the story that this is a non-political organization, and even to some extent give it the sheen, no pun intended, if you've heard of Bishop Sheen, but they give it the impression of being an official event, right? Their names appear as members of Congress with the Great Seal of the United States, and that letter goes out to people all around the world. And so then the local media can now report, oh, local right-wing pastor was invited by the US Congress to attend this event. And what that does is that empowers that guy in his home country. It enables him to justify whatever expenses are involved with attending, where he can also network, but it also means that back home, the people that he's interested in influencing, they now know, oh, this guy is gonna get to meet with the president and top evangelicals in Congress. That gives them power. And we're not the first to make this point. Jeff Charlotte certainly made that point this summer. An organization called the European Parliamentary Forum on Sexual and Reproductive Rights, which is members of parliaments throughout Europe that work on this. They specifically said prayer breakfasts are used by these far-right groups to grow their networks. And in response to some of our reporting, as you know, an LGBTQ organization called Forbidden Colors specifically warned Democrats about participating in these events because it empowers politicians who are then working actively right now to enact anti-LGBTQ legislation and also anti-women, anti-reproductive rights. So these are real effects that are happening right now, in part because Democrats are helping maintain this fiction.
Right, so it's a comprehensive series, and there's lots of examples of them doing right-wing things, and it's so plentiful that it becomes obvious. Like that's why I was joking around, like, oh, TYT investigates, they uncovered a right-wing organization being right-wing, but a lot of Democrats still participate. So Jonathan, some have pulled back, partly based on our reporting when we've asked them, and some still remain. So just give us a quick update on the status of that. Who pulled out?
Well, so
and how?
Yeah,
like
so
what percentage? Super roughly here.
We've had almost half a dozen, I would say, who have given us comments since we began reporting on the National Prayer Breakfast, saying, I wasn't aware of this, and I have concerns about this at a minimum right now. Ann Kirkpatrick is a Democratic member of Congress, and her spokesperson told us if we had known that anti-LGBTQ leaders were being invited in my name, I never would have lent my name to this cause, that kind of thing. So there's definitely some sense out there that there's a growing awareness, I would say. And by the way, that group I mentioned earlier, Forbidden Colors, they've communicated directly with members of Congress saying, we would like you to know this. So it's not like we're the only ones saying that this matters and that Democrats need to pay attention. And you don't even have to argue that the event has to go away, but at a minimum, if it's going to be portrayed as a semi-official event, where's the transparency? We have no idea who gets invited. We have no idea who decides who gets invited or how or why. People are being discriminated against. LGBTQ leaders are not being invited. Black leaders on the left, religious black leaders on the left, not being invited. So yeah, there's a lot of questions at a minimum.
Generally, we don't know, except you got one of the invite lists. So we do know a little bit, right. And that's why. Yeah. And that's why it's the exclusive stories that you're breaking left and right. All right, last couple of things here. But Biden did attend an event recently, right? So it's not like the Democrats are backpedaling out of there en masse. They're still largely participating.
Both Pelosi and Biden submitted videotapes to this past February's National Prayer Breakfast, which was remote due to COVID. My guess is that with everything going on, new administration, there simply wasn't the bandwidth for them to be aware of our reporting at the time, which in January, that leaders of the family had been financially backing big lie Republicans who were obviously, led to January 6th. So to what extent they're even aware of that dynamic, I couldn't tell you, but it's coming up on winter 21-22, so it's not that far away. So we'll see what happens this time around.
Right, and that's what led to your confrontation with Mike Lindell, and so they should know, but we'll see if they do know. And the reality is, guys, it's all about the pressure. If you put a big enough spotlight on it and you put pressure on them and say, do you want to support this group that does do these things? And if they say yes, okay, well then you have your answer for who they are, right? But we got to put a big enough spotlight on them so that they realize, yes, no, it turns out, funded by Franklin Graham, working with Mike Lindell, supported in all the ways that Jonathan outlines in his stories, all these Trump supporting, big lie supporting, right wingers. So do not give them credibility by attending and pretending it's nonpartisan. Okay, now having said all that, real quick, I think I know your bio. I should know your bio, and I probably asked you about.
You did hire me.
I did hire you, yes, and I probably asked about you about this before, and I've probably forgotten. But you wrote some of the Batman DC comic series.
I wrote 2 short stories, Batman stories for DC Comics several years ago. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a total hoot, a total blast. I'm very happy to have gotten the chance for sure.
I either did not know that or I forgot it, and I love that. I would have doubled hire you if I knew that.
I also did, if I can be shameless here, I did a web comic called The Endling, which I think people can still find on Comixology or Amazon or something like that. I'm not promoting Amazon, but which was much more political. So if people are interested in checking that out, that's out there as well as the Batman stuff.
Super quick question. Have you or have you not ever said, I'm Batman?
I was just making fun of the new trailer today. I'm vengeance. Who says that?
Apparently Batman, but yes, they need you back as the writer.
The new one does. Robert Pattinson does. That's who says it.
Right. All right, Jonathan Larson from TYT Investigates, breaking the hell out of stories. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Cenk.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.